Hi, this is Kelly Egan, and this is my Theory of Teaching and Learning Week 3 Debunking Myths presentation. For decades and even centuries, psychologists and educators have tried to find ways to understand learning diversities. As technology has increased, we continue to gain understanding and insight into how our brains take in newly learned material, process information, store it, and retrieve knowledge. However, we still do not completely understand why some are able to perform certain tasks better than others, while some can process information quickly and others need time to think. We also do not understand why some are musically talented, poetic orators, artistic, great mathematicians, or gifted scientists. One notion that gained momentum in the 1960s and the 1970s was the theory that the two different hemispheres of our brains were split and that each hemisphere specialized in certain abilities and ways of thinking. It was believed and became a popular phenomenon that in most people, one hemisphere dominated a person's skills and abilities. This became known as the left brain, right brained theory. A surgeon, Roger W. Sperry, was the first to support this theory after he and a colleague treated patients of severe epileptic seizures by severing the corpus callosum, the band of nerves that allow the two hemispheres to communicate with each other. Sperry and Michael Gazzaniga conducted many experiments in which they would only allow the right or left hemisphere to take in information. They knew that the left side controls the right side of the body, and the right side of the brain controls the left side of the body. They learned that visual information can be taken in through the left hemisphere and could then be shared verbally. But if it is only shown to the right hemisphere, the patient cannot share verbally what was seen, because language and communication is located in the left hemisphere of the brain. Basically, each side seemed to operate without awareness of each other. Sperry was actually awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 1981 for his findings. He confirmed differences between the two sides and then disclosed his findings in the research literature. These exciting new findings were shared and eventually publicized by many popular psychology and mainstream journalistic publications, such as the New York Times Magazine, Time Magazine, Harvard Business Review, and Psychology Today. These publications led to the pop psychology phenomenon of the left brain and right brain differences in personality, learning, and abilities. In this theory, the left brain dominant person is usually more logical, organized, mathematical, scientific in nature, analytical, and linear. Some even thought that those who were left-brained were more masculine in gender. In contrast, the person who was right brain dominant was creative, artistic, messy, intuitive, spontaneous, and again, right brain people were thought to be more feminine in gender. In the late 1980s and beyond, educators jumped on this theory as a way to understand the differences in learning abilities and skills of their diverse students. Their teachers were often told to create lessons that allowed students to play to their strengths, or to create lessons that worked both sides of the brain to create an equilibrium to enhance learning. Many believed that most students were left-brained and therefore school should push students to use their more creative side, or at least school should push students to develop their non-dominant side of their brains. One of the ways that this could be accomplished would be to pair students with the opposite dominant partner to create a balance and push one another. Teachers were encouraged to give students different inventory tests to find out what type of student each was, and then apply this knowledge to their classroom. As time went on and technology increased, we began to realize that there was not scientific evidence to back up this theory. Psychologists today understand the theory of left brain, right brain dominance to be a myth. We know that our brain and the hemispheres work together to communicate to give rise to our conscious thought, emotions, memories, our personalities, and who we are as people. But they do not determine which type of person or learner or which abilities we will excel in performing. Psychologists have learned that brain imaging techniques demonstrate that the hemispheres differ in their activity when people engage in various mental tasks. We also have used thousands of brain scans in normal functioning patients and in those who have damaged hemispheres to understand what abilities are centered in which hemisphere. From this research, we do know that certain things are carried out by one of the hemispheres. The left hemisphere is the center of language production and comprehension. It is also the center of mathematical abilities, speech, and the recognition of words when reading. We also know that it is where we decode language, literal meanings of communication, and visual objects. We know that two specific parts of the brain are located in this hemisphere. Broca's area is responsible for expressive language, and Wernicke's area gives us the ability to be receptive to language. The right hemisphere is responsible for several other abilities, including visual and spatial processes, like understanding how things fit into the space in our environment. This allows us to find our way around familiar places. The right hemisphere also allows us to recognize faces and see them as something different than other objects, an important trait for human evolution. The right hemisphere is what controls our tone and melody in our voice when we speak or sing. It also, in contrast to the left side, helps us in understanding verbal metaphors and decoding indirect or implied meaning. While this information is fascinating and important to understand, what is crucial is realizing that while these specific things may be located in specific hemispheres, the hemispheres constantly communicate with one another, and as educators, we need to be sure to allow learning that engages the entire brain. Technology and time have allowed us to better understand the brain and how it works in recent years, and this information can be directly applied to the classroom. Today we understand that teachers must focus on creating engaging lessons that allow students to use all forms of taking in information, problem solving, and learning in general. Most importantly, it seems that engaging all of the senses allows students to increase their storage and retrieval strength, especially when we use things like imagery for photographs, drawings, paintings, and poetry, with its words and pictures. Imagery has truly been shown to boost comprehension, especially when students are reading. Simple tricks like changing an environment or adding different stimuli to an environment can challenge the brain to retrieve information that may have been stored with only one path and increase that path's retrieval strength. Students should also be given time to space out their learning and recall opportunities, basically allowing information time to sink in and become internalized. This will help with later retrieval. Students who need to study or truly commit things to memory may benefit from creating their own self-assessments and using them to practice recalling learned information or skills. It also seems that problem-based learning opportunities that are open-ended and challenge students seem to motivate and allow for new ideas to synthesize in these challenges. We may not have all of the answers or completely understand how we take in information, process it, and retrieve it later, but we do know many techniques that help in the learning process, and limiting our abilities to one hemisphere is not scientific-based, nor an effective way to learn. Hopefully you understand that the myth of the left brain and right brain dominance has been debunked.